Hello, friends of the internet, and welcome. This is the second in our series, our MARTECH webinars for Omnichannel with Headless CMS. And this one's entitled 5 Steps to Creating an Agile Omnichannel Content Hub. My name is Joel Vardy, and I'm President and CTO at Agility CMS. Happy to have you with us today. Let's dive into the content. So the first thing I want you to consider today is that your brand experience needs to be unique, consistent, and relevant. And let's keep in mind that our content is our branding and it needs to be everywhere. And when we talk about omni-channel and online channels, we're talking about where your content is going to go. And where are those things on the internet? Well, the first one is your website, and you could have more than one website. That's the main anchor for your brand. And I consider the website as one of the most important sort of things that you can build. And it's usually the thing when people come to say, hey, I need Headless CMS or I need a CMS at all. Oftentimes we're thinking about a website, but it's really much, much more than that. It could be mobile apps as well. So iOS and Android. These are often built using an app store release cycle, so sometimes it takes a little longer to get a mobile app built. But with what we're showing you today, when you're considering mobile apps as one of your online channels, it really should be the same content that's going to both your website and your mobile apps. But even more than that, all the other screens that we think about, something like smart TVs, which I'll show you an example of in a case study in a moment, where the customer uses smart TVs, signage, digital signage, kiosks, all these places, any digital screen, that's where our content goes. It could be that, as a marketer in previous times, or maybe you're still doing this, that you would actually create print content where now that content is kind of locked in. It's never going to change. But with digital online channels, that content can change all the time. And with the rhythm of our content that we're sending to our website, that same rhythm can be used to update content in our mobile apps and online and other screens, digital screens. So that's where our content goes. But where does the content actually live? Where does it come from? And this is where the term Headless CMS comes in. This is where your content lives. It starts off with the model. We define what are the fields and structure for how that content is going to be managed. We look at that and sort of figure out all the pieces of the content that we need to have in order to output it to all these different places. Then we're going to create that content. So the Headless CMS is where we both model it and we create it. And our content editors are going to be the ones that are going to be inputting, importing, or translating this content to that central place or central hub. The Headless CMS is where it all lives. And then it's also where the content is published from. So we want to make that content available to all these various channels. So that's what the Headless CMS does. It becomes that central hub for us. And I have a great example from a customer. Our customer is called Cineplex Entertainment. So they're the largest movie theater chain in Canada. And they've been an Agility customer for a long, long time. Great case study. You talk about the pandemic. So pre-pandemic, the goal for Cineplex for their content was selling tickets. They want to get people into theaters, people, watching movies in the theaters and, buying the food as they go in and sit down. So, getting people to physically buy those tickets was their main goal. And how did they do that? Well, first, website. Online ticket sales is huge for Cineplex, and getting the content on their website was super important when they first came to us. So that's one of the things. So hey, let's use a Headless CMS. So here's Agility, and that Agility content goes from the central spot onto the website. So that's great. But by the by, this Cineplex has been a customer for ours for a long time, and mobile apps came about as another way of selling tickets. People have their phones in their hands all the time now. This is actually me just a few minutes ago. This is the Cineplex mobile app on iOS and Android. So this is a screenshot. Well, I see a picture of my phone sitting on my kitchen table showing the Cineplex app. So the same content that's in the Headless CMS gets pushed to the website and to the app, and it works great. And so, before the pandemic, this is how Cineplex was selling tickets, and works great. And that's what they're starting to return to now that, theaters have opened up full capacity. But when the pandemic first hit, there was a real pivot that Cineplex took where they were saying, oh, maybe our goal now isn't to sell tickets for the movie theaters. Now our goal is for streaming services. And this is where Cineplex was really smart. In hockey terms, I would say it's where they, previously setting themselves up they skated to where the puck is going to be. To meet their customers where they were going to be. The customers were going to be in their living rooms watching TV. And so being able to sell streaming content is really important. How did they do that? First things first, store.cineplex.com. There's a website. How do we get the content on the website? Same as we did before with Agility CMS in the Headless CMS. But also, we've learned people want to have everything on their mobile devices. So this, again, another screenshot or a photograph of my phone sitting on my table showing the Cineplex Store mobile app. So they have a mobile app for the main website, for the main content, for selling tickets, but then a whole nother app and a whole nother set of content in a different property for their streaming services. But yes, some folks are going to watch movies on their phone. Maybe somebody's going to watch it in their browser, on their laptop or their desktop. But really, people want to watch these things on a TV. And this is where Cineplex has really done really well, because every smart TV in Canada comes preloaded, at least the LG TV that I have, preloaded with the Cineplex Store app on the smart TV. So amazingly enough, you can just sign up, use the same account across all of these things to get the content that you've rented or purchased. And all of this is being driven through the Headless CMS. So we've got a content hub now in a Headless CMS that's pushing all this content to all these different channels. It's just a really great case study of a company that's being able to be very dynamic with where their content goes in an omni-channel type scenario. We've got all these different places for the content to go and one central place to store it. So I was talking really fast. Let's take a step back here. How do you do this, right? Agility is the Headless CMS tool, but how would you actually implement this? This is where we get into the step-by-step process. So let's go through it. You want to have all of this content on all these screens, right? I want all the screens. I want my desktop, tablet, phone, even the TV. In fact, let's upgrade the TV. Let's get a new smart TV, because that's where we really want this content. So that's the thing. Every screen is smart. Every screen has the capability to show digital content. So let's figure out how we can get that content in a hub so we can send it to all the different screens. Step one is to identify the content. I've harped on about this, I feel like forever. And part of it is just to understand you have content that's valuable. So the most important thing is to identify that, what's valuable to your organization and within each property that you can use, okay? So the first step there is to think about the structure of that content. Is it a blog post? Is it a movie listing? Is it a rental, a movie rental? Those are all different things. They're going to have different fields and different data types for those fields. Some things are going to be images. Some things are going to be pieces of text or dates or numbers. All these different pieces. It's kind of like a database when you think of it, and some people think of their CMS as a database, but it's really more high level than that. It's a really well-defined structure. Well, you also have to think about who's going to be working with that structure, the team of people that are going to own that in terms of being responsible for creating it and publishing it. And that creating and publishing of content, that translating it to different languages, that's all part of what we call a workflow. That's a process for taking any source materials that folks have. As new movies come out, Cineplex is going to be creating new versions of those inside the CMS for, one for, hey, this is an instance of a movie that's going to be playing in a theater. And maybe when that's now available as a digital download, now we need to create that in the store instance. So there's like the same kind of property, but it's in two different structures. And that becomes a central holding place where that content can be used. And for your organization, you're going to have all of your own content. So identifying what that is, who's going to work with it, and what the workflow actually is key. That's step one. We also want to, as a step two, identify the digital properties that you actually have. So we might actually have multiple hubs of content. Cineplex has one hub for their main, cineplex.com sort of structure for this is where we're trying to sell tickets, but they have a different digital property for the actual store. And as it turns out, many organizations have multiple digital properties that they are actually serving. Sometimes you can combine them into a single hub, and sometimes you want to spread them out, right? This is not to be confused with the different screens. A different property could have output to multiple screens. Remember in the Cineplex example, this is the Cineplex Store, which is one property that's going out to 3 different types of screens, right? So we want to identify the actual properties that you have. Many organizations have at least one, but some have more than one, okay? Then we're going to actually start modeling the content for each of those properties. And content modeling, it's really congruent with the idea of architecture. It takes me back to the Seinfeld quote from George Costanza. I always wanted to pretend that I was an architect. Architect is a thing that we may think that you need super special training, and it's really hard to do because we're going to be architecting a bridge or a skyscraper or a really tall tower, and we don't want that thing to fall down. Well, content architecture, it's really important because it does provide the foundation for the future, but I'd say it's much easier than actual architecture. It's not like engineering where you gotta, figure out the strength of the concrete and the steel structures and all that other stuff. For content architecture, we're going to be modeling what really you as a leader in your business are already an expert at. And that's the content that's important to you. You know what makes it up. And let's have a strategy for that content. And the first thing that's important to look at is, what is the goal of it? Okay, going back to the Cineplex example, well, one of the digital properties, the goal for Cineplex.com is to sell tickets, right? It's to raise awareness about the movies that are going to be in theaters and to sell tickets to those movies. For the Cineplex store, well, that's easy. It's to raise awareness for the movies that are available on the streaming system and to get people to rent and buy them, right? So both of these things are going to be generating revenue. So outlining the goals for the content is really important. And if there are two sets of goals, you might have two sets of properties. That's another good way to sort of answer, number one and number two. What is the structure of the content? This is a thing that oftentimes people will do as number one without thinking about the strategy. So don't forget the strategy and then start digging into the structure of that content. What are the actual pieces of it? Are there lists? Are there single items? Are there image assets that you need? Are there file assets? Who's going to be accessing it? All that sort of stuff. What is actually in that content? Really important. Let's come back to teams again. Okay, who is going to be working with this content? This is really important because it could be that some content is kind of like a looser structure where it's like, well, it could be that someone has like a rich text area where they're going to take content from, like, maybe it's in Word documents, things like that. We want to take the text out of there and put it in here, and it's very free form. That doesn't work that well when you're going to be sending it to like small screens. So oftentimes we might want to say, let's not have one big field. Let's have multiple fields where we're going to break something up by, like, it's a title, it's an author, it's a date, it's all the different pieces. So that way when we show it on a different screen in an omnichannel architecture, we can actually use that content and change how it gets displayed for those different screens. So that's what content architecture is all about. Step 4, we want to use modern tooling. This is really, really important. And I would say one of the most modern tools is a headless CMS, right? Traditional CMS is an old school kind of idea. The idea of, hey, I need a website. How can I get a website? Oh, let's use WordPress. And okay, now I have my website, but the content for that website ends up being locked into it. And so I have to enter my content on the website as well as on all these other places. And that's how you get what's called content silos. So modern tooling, like Headless CMS, is a way to get what's called a content hub, where we can have one single source of truth for all of our content that's available to all the different channels and screens that we need. So Headless CMS is central to that. And I think 2021 is the biggest thing is enterprises have really opened up to the idea of Headless CMS as it fits into the ecosystem of all their other business tools. And I think for 2022, it's going to explode even more. Part 2, I actually feel a little weird putting it on here because this presentation, this webinar is not for developers. But we really have to think about the tools that developers are going to use as well, because they are building the technology that is going to go on these screens. So we have to understand a little bit about the development frameworks and the tools that they're going to use to get it done, to get it faster, to make it more future-proof. So we should understand a little bit about that. And you might have heard of web tooling like Next.js or Gatsby, those kind of things. There's quite a few of them out there, lots of new stuff, and just having a little bit of understanding about the fact that you want to use a modern framework is really important because it ties together with the integrations that are capable, right? And this is where we bring everything together. You're going to bring together your Headless CMS, the development frameworks, and all of your other tools. And if you're a marketer, you understand you're going to have, all of the different email marketing tools that you have, all the automation systems. Could be ActiveCampaign, could be, HubSpot or Salesforce, all these different things. Oftentimes we'll switch them out too, so they may change and evolve over the years, but we need to integrate and bring all these things together. Now, you might not know the exact details for all these things, but you have to understand a little bit about how something called an API works. And as I've said, Many times it's an API-driven world, and we're just living in it. So an API is the technology that connects our tools. And knowing that it works, knowing that all of our tools have good APIs, and I think for a headless CMS especially, it's an API-driven tool at its heart. Many of the business tools that are out there are API-driven. Things like Salesforce, e-commerce is very much API-driven these days, and they can all be what's also called headless. So looking into those terminologies for those tools is really important, and something that, if you want to, at the end of the presentation, I'll have some ways to connect with us. I'd like to talk to you more about APIs and headless and all the different frameworks and tools that are available to connect them. The last step, probably the most important thing, because many people can get through from 1 to 4 and they build a thing and they get to, I built my property and I've got something, and then that's it, and I'm going to do a set it and forget it. And I'm here to tell you that you don't want to just set it and forget it. Your business can be so much more. And this is where we look at, Cineplex.com built a system that was very successful for selling tickets, but they didn't just set it and forget it. They skated to where the puck is going to be, and they iterated and they were agile. That's really, really important for the future of your business to be, resistant to things like a pandemic. And it comes into a concept that I call the Agile content methodology. We talk about being agile a lot. Let's outline the steps to get towards that, so we can all skate to where the puck is going to be. The first thing is architect and create beautiful structures, right? And this is not just content architecture, but architecting all of the different pieces that your business needs to incorporate, so like all the different pieces we talked about, headless CMS and frameworks and tools, but there's more to it than that. There's teams that are going to work together. There's processes that you're going to have inside your organization. So we need to architect and create that as a beautiful structure. And I say it's beautiful because it ends up looking kind of like a honeycomb, and if it's beautiful, if it's not beautiful, it's going to look like a rat's nest of nasty things. We want it to be a beautiful structure so it's easy to understand and it's simple. And we want to reuse our content. Your content should be able to go to all those different screens easily. If you have a good, beautiful structure, good architecture, that's very easy to do. And it's easy to, hey, we want to get our stuff on a smart TV. That's just another screen. We want to put it on a digital display, a digital signage display outside of a building. Hey, we can do that. It's just another screen if we have a beautiful structure that we can build on. So we can reuse our content anywhere. And then the most important one is we need to react. This is a bit of a play on words because one of my favorite frameworks is called React as a developer. But we need to be able to react to meet our customers where they're going. This is about, the hockey terminology, skate to where the puck's going to be. Oftentimes we'll hear somebody say, hey, you need to meet your customers where they are. Well, we can be, with the Agile methodology, we can actually go to where we think they're going to be. We can be a little bit of ahead of the ball because we can understand that customer needs are always changing and our goals are going to evolve over time. And so we need to be agile with that. And I'd like to help you with that. And, to help customers go through that is one of the things that really excites me in this business. Again, this is just the start of the conversation. I'd like to continue the conversation with you folks. For sure, follow us on Twitter at Agility CMS. Follow myself at Joel Vardy. This is just, again, part of a series of MARTECH webinars. So you can see us online, agilitycms.com/events, or get in touch with me. My email is joel@agilitycms.com, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. That's all for today. Take care and have a great one.